Paris tonight is a city on edge, sirens wail, protesters fill the streets, and the air is thick with tear gas and anger. From the Place de la République to the Champs-Élysées, confrontation is everywhere. Protesters, faces lit by burning bins, chant against a president they feel has failed them. The government of Prime Minister François Bayrou has collapsed after just 9 months, leaving France leaderless at a moment of crisis. Major roads are blocked, trains halted by union walkouts. France's tradition of protest has exploded into chaos. The spark €44 billion in austerity cuts, but the real fuel is years of economic frustration and political division. The world watches as France, long a pillar of Europe, seems to unravel. Faith in politics, in Europe, and in Macron himself is crumbling. These protests are about more than a budget. They're about the soul of the republic. Each shattered window and defiant chant signals a nation lost in uncertainty. The path forward is shrouded in fog. France stands at a crossroads, its future and Europe's hanging in the balance. In 2017, Emmanuel Macron promised a new France and a stronger Europe. He was young, dynamic, and determined to break the old political mold. Macron's vision, a sovereign, united Europe with France as its engine. He pushed for European defense, a shared budget, and a unified stance against global threats. Europe relied on him as Germany hesitated. At home, Macron's reforms, labor laws, pensions, tax cuts, were meant to modernize France. But many saw them as favoring the elite, sparking the yellow vests, and deepening divides. Now, in 2025, that promise feels distant. The reforms meant to strengthen France have paralyzed it, triggering today's crisis. Macron, once Europe's anchor, now presides over gridlock and unrest. His quest to lead Europe may have left France and the continent adrift. The void at Europe's center grows. The end was swift. On September 8th, the National Assembly passed a no-confidence vote toppling Prime Minister François Bayrou's government. Bayrou, Macron's 5th prime minister in 2 years, failed to unite a fractured parliament. The trigger, a harsh austerity budget, meant to rein in soaring debt but seen as an attack on the French way of life. Far-right and far-left parties joined forces to bring the government down. Bayrou's resignation was inevitable. His government never had a true majority. Macron's alliance has relied on fragile deals and controversial tactics, eroding trust. The no-confidence vote was a rejection of both the budget and Macron's style of governance. Now, Macron faces a hostile parliament and no clear path forward. The forces that toppled Bayrou remain entrenched. The crisis is just beginning. The Franco-German partnership has long driven Europe, but France's crisis now threatens the entire Union. Political paralysis in Paris creates a dangerous vacuum as Europe faces war in Ukraine and economic turmoil. France's debt, over €3 trillion, poses a systemic risk to the Eurozone. A credit downgrade could trigger a new debt crisis across Europe. Macron's fall emboldens nationalist and Eurosceptic forces, weakening the EU's unity. The crisis undermines Europe's ability to act on security, climate, and migration. France's retreat from Africa and the UN Security Council would leave Europe's voice diminished. With Germany divided and the UK gone, French instability comes at the worst possible time. When Paris sneezes, Europe catches a cold. Now Paris has a fever, and Europe braces for contagion. The stakes are global. Amid the chaos, Marine Le Pen and her far-right national rally are poised to gain most. Years of positioning as defenders of the people now pay off as the establishment falters. Le Pen has softened her image, but her core message, national sovereignty, order and border control, resonates more than ever. She's no longer a protest candidate, she's a real alternative. By joining the far left to topple the government, Le Pen blames the system for dysfunction and demands snap elections. In this climate, her party could become the largest in parliament, forcing Macron into an uneasy power-sharing deal. The prospect of a Le Pen presidency in 2027 is now central to French politics. Each day of instability brings her closer to power. The far right is no longer at the gates, it's inside, waiting for the old order to collapse. France's future may soon be in Le Pen's hands. France's turmoil is not unique. It mirrors cracks across Europe. Germany's coalition is divided, Italy's right-wing government challenges Brussels, and Spain's fragile alliances teeter. Populist and far-right parties are rising everywhere, pushing mainstream politics to the edge. Economic pressures, energy, inflation, debt, fuel discontent from Lisbon to Warsaw. Populists offer simple answers, blaming elites and immigrants for complex problems. But France's crisis is the most severe. A presidential system with an ungovernable parliament and a powerful far right. The collapse of France's center is a warning to all of Europe. If the center cannot hold in Paris, it may not hold anywhere. Europe watches, anxious that France's fate could soon be its own. Macron, trapped in the Élysée, faces impossible choices. He can appoint a technocrat hoping to build a fragile unity government, but it would be weak and short-lived. Legislative gridlock would persist and Macron's presidency would be sidelined. His second option, call snap elections. But polls suggest disaster. Le Pen's party would surge, forcing Macron into cohabitation with a far-right prime minister. He's ruled this out, but pressure mounts. The third path, muddle through with caretaker governments and constitutional tricks, managing crisis after crisis. France would turn inward, paralyzed by dysfunction. Macron's grand ambitions would fade into irrelevance. None of these options restore stability. The president who promised renewal now fights just to survive. France's future and Europe's hangs in the balance. A Marine Le Pen presidency, once unthinkable, is now a real possibility for 2027. Her victory would shake the EU to its core, challenging decades of integration and liberal democracy. Le Pen's agenda, national preference for jobs and welfare, defying EU principles and risking legal battles. She would push to weaken the EU from within, halting integration and fracturing unity. On foreign policy, her stance on Russia and NATO would alarm allies and embolden adversaries. Economically, her protectionism could spark trade wars and worsen France's debt crisis. A Le Pen win would be an existential crisis for the EU, signaling that nationalism is now the dominant force. The European project itself would be at risk. The world would feel the shockwaves. The fires in Paris cast shadows across all of Europe. France's crisis is a moment of truth for the EU, built on the assumption of a stable, leading France. That foundation is now crumbling. Macron's fate is tied to Europe's future. His failure would be a collective one. Without France, the EU is rudderless. Germany cannot lead alone. Key initiatives would stall and Europe would drift, vulnerable to global pressures. The coming weeks in France will shape the continent's destiny. If the center cannot hold, the forces of division may triumph. The battle for France is a battle for Europe's soul. Tonight, the future of both hangs in the balance.